A childhood of trauma, overwhelmed, silent and alone.
I love the windmills, but they just remind me of my childhood that was gone in a blink.
One of the reasons why the watch is important to me is people have this perception that with time this will change, and that's true, but actually it doesn't mean to say it goes away. It just means that you live with it differently.
So the reason why I like this picture of the waterfall, because it kind of like represents my journey through like doing the research project, because as you can see, like the waterfall like comes up and then goes down. I kind of see it like a roller coaster. So like when it was coming up, like when I signed up for it, like I was really excited, but then I was really nervous as well. And then there's that downfall as well, where it's like, I'm not sure if I'm good enough or not. So it just represents kind of like my journey on it. And like, I just like the waterfall because like, even in life, like you're gonna have your ups and downs.
What do you see? A path to peace, to beauty? I see a trigger. I feel terror.
This image represents a fear for me. And it is a trigger, and it's a trigger of fear of safety in my own home.
Ugh. Anything to do with that picture is a visceral, violent, awful reaction. Anything to do with football, a stadium, football player, football, just makes me want to physically throw up. It's a very bad trigger, and still now. I can't speak very well about that, I'm afraid.
Each individual victim or survivor will find a way of coping and managing their distress. And often that distress will last for many, many years. So some people will have eating disorders, self-injuring behavior, drugs, alcohol. And for me, one of the ways was just to not feel it. So there was a knowledge, there was a knowing that these things had happened to me, but I didn't feel it. And so it was as if I had this empty gap in my body. So I didn't have that sensation. So when the time came that those dam walls burst and I was just flooded with emotions, it was almost as if this gap was now full of just red hot pain. And so this symbol is really important to me, and it's one I use a lot as a reminder of how far I've come.
The picture for the sunset, the reason why I chose it is that it brings me a lot of peace. There's just something about the sunset and nature just brings me a lot of peace, and like it like takes me back to that time of how overwhelmed I was feeling, like with uni, the pandemic and everything else in first year. And like I took a picture of that sunset and like I just felt so calm. So that's why I love that picture.
This image represents a new growth and a cycle of life, and for me that represents hope.
I always thought recovering would mean going back to before, going back to a fresh rose with lush green leaves and taking everyone's breath away again. I thought I'd ruined myself and lost something sweet and innocent after, but instead I was just intended for another purpose. I can't go back to who I was before, but I can choose what I become.
When we're talking about sexual trauma or sexual abuse, it's often we're talking about the elephant in the room because people don't want to talk about these things. Society's uncomfortable about these things. And yet we must as a society, we must as individuals talk about the elephant in the room, because otherwise victims, survivors remain invisible, and we have stood by and let that happen.
This picture makes me smile, and it is for me healing. This is where I went to heal. It's my second home, and there's everything about that picture that just gives me peace, smile, joy, healing. People
adopt different symbols that help them cope, and many years ago, I came across the colour purple, which many victim survivors had adopted, and organisations as well. So the colour purple became important to me, and the history of the colour purple as well. And sometimes it can be hard for other people to show they care, and we don't always let them do that either. And my husband is somebody who is not a caring, sharing kind of guy. We've been married 50 years and he just isn't that kind of person. But I came home one day and he'd painted the garage door purple. And that really lifted my heart because it showed how much he cared.
The trauma will always be part of me, but it won't ever stop me growing.
In this image is a picture of an adult's hand and a child's hand, and what that represents is that the children are our future and that we are making changes for future generations to come.
As victims and survivors, we find different ways of having some level of control. And so for me, from quite an early age on, I didn't allow myself to cry, or if I did cry, it wasn't in front of anybody else, because that was a weakness, was to cry. And there was a lot to cry about, but I wasn't able to do it. And so it was many years later that that dam burst and I was able to cry. And then, in fact, I couldn't stop. And for me, that was shocking, that I was crying and then I couldn't stop. And it wasn't just about the tears that were falling from my eyes. It was as if I had every pore of my body was seeping tears and sadness. And it was a very difficult experience for me, having been in control for so long, to have so many tears and so many episodes of just crying. It was shocking for me to experience that, and shocking for me that others saw it.
And everybody was talking about how amazing this drink is. And when I tasted it, honestly, it's literally so, so good. And like, I've never tasted a drink like that. And I took a picture of it and it was on a sunny day. It was cold. It was just nice. And I just love that picture.
As a victim survivor, I had all my life presented an image of this is who I am. But in fact, it wasn't who I was. It was an outer shell that I had created that was a safety net for me. And part then of reviewing and exploring the experiences I had of being sexually assaulted, sexually abused, raped over a number of years was to begin to peel back those layers. And of course, as we do that, we experience the pain of that time. And so as we went through pulling apart this doll, which I did do, was inside was this hurt person, this tiny hurt person who had been raped over a number of years and had managed to survive. And that meant that I too could survive, and that this wouldn't kill me, even though it was something I wanted to do. It wouldn't kill me. I could do this.
Oh, look. This to me is a girl and a dog. The sun is rising, and this was about, 6:10 in the morning. This is me, really happy in my soul, happy in my heart, watching another day come up. And the sunrise to me is full of hope, resilience, endurance, change, happiness, moving on, moving upwards, moving forwards, laughter,